everyone. Today we're going to be doing a video on account codes, creating account codes and managing the account codes on a Sharp Color MFP. There's going to be a difference between the Sharp Color MFP and the Sharp Black and White MFPs, so I will be making a separate video for black and white account codes. Black and white account codes, just not as many steps as the color account codes. With the color, when we put a color MFP out at a customer location, usually, the customers generally want to try to lock down the color output as much as possible. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over all of those steps, creating, limits, creating users, and then, what happens when the user reaches their limit, and how to clear the user's count once they have reached their limit. So first thing we're going to want to know is we're going to want to know the copier MFP's IP address. Once you know the IP address, basically what you do is just open up a web browser, go ahead and type in the IP address, hit enter, and you should be taken to a page that looks like this. Today I'm going to be working on a Sharp MX5141N, but the account code setup for the color copier MFPs, it's basically all the same. All the steps are very similar, if not exact. So again, these steps do not, specifically apply to the MX5141. They apply to most of the color MFPs which are out there. Once we hit this page, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to go into the upper right, and we're going to click on Login. This is where we are going to log in as the administrator. Default password for administrator is going to be all lowercase ADMIN. Once we have that typed in, we're going to go ahead and click Login, and our page is going to refresh. On your left side, what you're going to find is you're going to find a user control, and what we're going to do is we're just going to click on the arrow here. Now, a couple things that there's sort of a couple of hoops that we have to jump through, and a couple things to consider when we are creating our account codes. One is you guys need to know how you want your users to authenticate. When the users walk up to the machine, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to type in an account code, or do you want them to authenticate with a username and a password? Usually the username and a password is a lot of typing to do at the MFP, so usually I recommend, if you're going to go with account codes, just have your users authenticate with a number only. It makes it much easier. It makes life for the users much easier. It keeps them functional, because again, having to type in a long username and a long password at the MFP to make a copy or a print or something like that can be kind of a pain. The other thing you need to consider is your page limits. What is the limit that your users are going to hit, if they're going to have a limit at all? We have customers which are setting limits on a monthly basis. So basically, once a user hits their limit, they don't get any more copies till the end of the month, and then an administrator goes in at the end of the month and resets all the codes, and then people can print again. We also have customers that just say all we want to do is really track the users, so we don't want to give them any sort of limitation, but at the end of the month an administrator does want to go in and they do want to check and see what they're doing, and then be able to clear their accounts on a monthly basis as well. So that's another thing you want to figure out. Do you want your users to have a limit? Do you only want to monitor what your users are doing? Or if they hit the limit, what are you going to do with them then? Do you want to lock them out for the rest of the month, or stuff like that? Also, in the page limit thoughts, what you guys need to consider as well is, if you are going to set limitations on your users, it's really a good idea to understand how many prints or copies they're going to be allowed on either a weekly basis or monthly basis. Because what we have to do is we have to create what are known as page limit groups. So essentially we create a group, we assign that group a page limit, and then we assign the user to the page limit. So if I am limiting my users and I am saying my users only get 100 copies and prints a month, then basically what I need to do is create a page limit group that says this group of users can only print 100 per month, and I need to do that in advance. So I need to make sure that my groups are pre-configured before I start to set up my users and stuff like that. Within the color MFP, some of the limitations that you can assign to the users is you can assign, whether you want your users to print in color, or you can set whether you want your users to only print in black and white. Those are some of the limitations that you can set up, and we're going to walk through that as we go on. So let's go ahead and get started. So by default, our user control is going to be turned off. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to tell the machine, okay, now we want to start using account codes. So what we're going to do is on the left side, we're going to go under the user control, and then we're going to click on default settings. And forgive me, I don't know if my page is reset or my machine is running a little bit slow. This will just take a second for my page to refresh. Any day. Oh, it kicked me out. Okay, so basically I'm just going to log in again. And as you can see, I'm just going to, it took me to the default settings, but again, basically if it didn't take you to this screen, go ahead and go under user control and then click on default settings. And as you can see, my user authentication is disabled by default. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and enable this. Once this is enabled, you can see I have a couple choices which have now lit up. And this is basically where I'm going to decide how I want my users to authenticate. For this tutorial, we're just going to stick to user number only. Again, in my experience, having the users authenticate by a login name and a password is a lot of extra steps for them. And it can slow them down. Once the users start slowing down, they can sort of get mutinous. So I like to keep them functional, so I always recommend just authenticate to user by user number only. Down here we have another area to pay attention to. This is going to be the area that sort of lets, that we sort of stipulate what's going to happen when a user reaches their limit. Again, my theory is I keep the users functional. I don't want them stopping in the middle of their job. I want them to get their job and then to move on. So basically, I always have this top selection selected. And what this says is, even if a user is in the middle of a copy job and they hit their limit, basically it's just going to go ahead and finish their job for them and let them take their copies. But you do have other options as well. You have the option to stop immediately once the page limit is reached, and then you have the option of canceling and deleting the job automatically. But like I said, I keep the users functional and I keep them moving. So I strongly recommend just go ahead and do this. You have your couple other options when the user code fails. So we have some stuff over here. If a user types in an incorrect password, if we have this checked, the machine will go ahead and let them know that their login has failed. We also have this option here of disabling a printing by an invalid user. So again, if we set account codes and you guys only want to monitor what your users are doing for copies, we could enable this. We could leave this unchecked, and what this would do is this would allow all of your users to print without having to enter an account code. If you check this, then basically your users will have to authenticate when they print as well. And again, if you guys are monitoring your color output, this is going to be super, super important. So I strongly recommend this. If you're going to turn account codes on, do it for both copying and printing, and then you can monitor your users. For the default settings, that's basically it. Nothing else really needs to be changed. Once you're happy with these settings, you're going to go down to the bottom and you're going to click Submit. Once it is successfully processed, it'll go ahead and give you confirmation of that. Now, what we have now is the machine is basically ready to use account codes, and as of now, the machine is going to be completely locked out for copies and prints. So our next thing we're going to do is we're now going to need to create page limit groups and start to set limitations, and I'll go through that next. So once we're happy here, we're going to go down to our page limit group. Because we've now enabled account codes on our machine, the machine will require us to re-authenticate and re-log in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on this administrator login. And then we're going to type in that same password, lowercase a-d-m-i-n. So you can see right here, this is where I'm going to be creating my page limit group. So again, if you're going to be assigning limits to your users, it says user A only gets 500, user B gets 200. This is where you're going to want to create these groups. And again, these will be just generic groups that you will plug users into after you create them. So if I want to create a new group, basically I would click add, and this is where I can start to set all of my limitations. So by default, everything is set to unlimited. So if I wanted to give my users, let's say I want to give this, I'm going to label this one 50 black and white. This account group will only allow 50 black and white copies only. So in here, I would allow black and white copying. I would set this to limited. And now I'd be able to set a limit. I call this 150. So again, as soon as this whatever user is assigned to this group and they hit 50 black and white, it's going to stop their job and not let them make any more copies after that. My full color, because I'm making a black and white, I'm going to want to prohibit color entirely. And I'm going to want to prohibit color for two color and single color as well. So again, this is really important when you guys are doing these things, because again, the black and white and the color are separated. So it's important when you create your groups, you do have to create separate groups. You have to create separate limitations for black and white, and you have to create separate limitations for color, just to keep everything straight, because it can get kind of confusing otherwise. Now within the color, you can if you're going to allow your users to print in color, then automatically they will have the right to print in black and white, and you can you can assign the same sort of limits should you want to. So like I said, this is going to be my 50 black and white. I'm going to come down here to my prints, and essentially I'm going to limit my prints as well to 50, and I would prohibit color. So as you can see right now with my black and white 50, I've limited my user to 50 black and white copies per month, and I've limited them to 50 black and white prints per month. Once I'm happy with this group, I would just go to the bottom and click submit. Now, if I wanted to create a separate color group, I'd go ahead and click add, and I would do, let's say I wanted to do 50 color. Same basic principle for black and white. This is where it gets kind of tricky. If you set your print driver to black and white, it is going to authenticate as a black and white. So what I would do in here for color is I would go ahead and just assign the same amount for color and for black and white. Just like I said, just to keep the users moving, because if you give the users too many rules, they get really confused, and they don't know where they're supposed to authenticate, and it can become very confusing for the user, or excuse me, it can become confusing for the administrator to really keep a solid track of this stuff. So again, like I said, if I was going to do color, I would apply the same color limit and a black and white as well. So I'd go limited, 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 limited. Basically, I would give these four categories, excuse me, the same limits. And then for printing, I would do the same thing. Limited, limited, 50. And 50. Once I'm happy with this stuff, then basically once I'm happy with my limits, I would come down here and save my group again. And you guys can create as many groups as you want, and you can drill them down as detailed as you want. You could create a separate group for administrators who have unlimited color, or another group for teachers that have unlimited black and white, but they only get 15 color prints per month, stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can detail these groups, and basically you just create the groups with however you guys are happy with and however you guys really want to manage your stuff. Once we have our page limit group list, then basically from here we're basically ready to start creating our users. So we're going to move back up to user list. And we're going to come down here, and you can see I've already created a couple users. By default, you'll have these administrators, these users up top by default, but you can see down here I created a couple ones in the past, but I'm going to create a new one for you guys. So here we're going to click add, and we're going to give them a name. Name can be whatever you want, we've had to create users by extensions and stuff like that. So again, the username can really be whatever you guys want, just as long as it's easy for your users to remember what their username is. Initial down here is optional. If you want to put an initial, you can. And after the initial, we would just drop down to the user number. Now, per my setting of the default settings, I set it to authenticate by user by a number only. So I have this option available. Now, if you had selected authenticate by user name and password, obviously you would have additional fields in here to fill out, but because I'm only requiring my users to authenticate by number, I only have this single field. Now this field does have to be between 5 and 8 digits, so you guys have some leeway in there, and some flexibility to create a lot of account codes. I'm going to go ahead and just add mine as 5 zeros. Once I've created my account code, I have a couple extra fields in here. Again, these are optional, not really necessary. If you want to put the user's email address and their home path directory in there, you can. Once we are good with the user number, what we're going to do is we're going to drop down to this other section in here, and then we're going to assign this user the page limits group. So again, this is going to be all the groups that we've created, and this is basically where you plug your users into. So this user that I'm going to create, I'm just going to stick him in the 50 black and white, so I don't get lost. I'm just going to call him BW. Now this user who will authenticate with 5 zeros will only have access to be able to do 50 black and white copies and prints per month. And again, this is based on the groups that I just created. Once I'm here, I'm happy with it. I would just basically come down and go submit. If I have more users to create, I could select submit and register next. I'm going to go ahead and create an additional user. So now what I'll do is I'll create my color user and assign a number 1111, and basically I would come down here to my page limit list. I would say this is my 50 color user and submit. Oops. Just so I don't get lost. So as you can see right now, I've created 2 additional users. I created a test user, black and white, and a test user color. Again, I assigned each of those users to a specific page limit group, and those page limit groups were created previously per my specifications, or per whatever company specifications that you guys have. Once these users are here, basically that's it for creating the users. After you create the users, then as from an administrator standpoint, what you want to do is you want to be able to go in to the machine, you know, once a month, once every couple of weeks, and then sort of monitor what your users are doing and see, you know, what they've done, and be able to reset their limits and stuff like that. So same basic area. Under my user control, I have my user count, and I have a view user count, and I have a save user count. So if I just want to view my users, basically I would just come here, select one of my users. Let me just use this one. And I want to view all of this stuff that my users have done. If I didn't want to view the list prints and the scans and the faxes and the scans to hard drive, then I would just only, you know, sort of check what I want here. After I have this selected, I have two options essentially. What I could do is if I clicked clear count, this will clear however many prints that this user has done. Obviously, I don't want to do that since I am, you know, doing account codes. Obviously, I'm going to need to be able to see what they've done before I clear this count. So what you want to do is you want to click show. And this will show in detail basically everything that this user has done, and then you also have in parentheses, you know, what their total is. From here, you have a pretty with the detailed count that it gives you, what you can do is if you want to clear some or all, you would just basically check these boxes and then basically select clear count here. Once you select clear count, their counts will reset back to 0, and then they'll be able to make, you know, upwards of whatever your page limit was. If I didn't want to, you know, clear this user's counter, color counter, and I only wanted to clear this user's black and white counter, you know, again, just come in here, select black and white, check it, and then just go clear count. And again, like I said, this will reset the user and allow them to start making copies and prints again. We can update this. So basically what we've done in a nutshell, we've done a couple things. By default, the machine has account codes turned off. So the first thing we've done is we went to the web page, logged in as administrator, went under user control and went to the default settings. From here, we enabled the default settings and we selected what type of authentication we want to use. After we selected that, we went down to our page limit group list. Our page limit group list is where we create our limitations for our users. And again, you can get really detailed with locking out black and white entirely, and you can get really detailed with limiting each of these categories. And again, you have up, you know, from 1 to, you know, 99 million to put in here. After we created our page limit groups, we then went and created our users. Clicked on user list, and then I clicked add. Once I was in my users, I gave my user a name. I gave my user a number that was between 5 and 8 digits. And then I then assigned my user to my page limit group. Once I selected that, I just went and submitted at the bottom. After my users have done some stuff, what I then went to do, now as an administrator, I then needed to check the counts. I then went under user list to user count. And from here, I can select my users and clear counts, or I can show my counts. And I can also select the type of counts that I'm going to be looking to show. So again, if I only want to show copies, or let's select this, and I wanted this user, Ron Stanton, selected, select what I want to show, and then go show. From here, I would then be able to make notations of what has been done, and I would also be able to, on an individual basis, be able to clear this counts that the users has used. And that's essentially it. That's account codes on the Sharp MFP.